Hey guys, welcome back to Monday Warfare, the battles within. It is Raw versus Nitro, the video cast. I am Ray Russell, and returning once again, delighted to announce Mr. John Paz here once again. Welcome back, John.
Hello. Thank you for having me back. Glad to be back. I love covering this era. I love Nitro. I like Raw, but I love Nitro.
Well, that's fine because we have both of them here, so you'll like and love the entire program, hopefully. He is indeed the man behind the two-man power trip empire. John, tell everybody how they can find you, what you got going on right now.
Find me and follow me at Two-Man Power Trip on Instagram and Twitter, X, if you will. You could follow on Patreon, patreon.com/TMPT Empire. And then you go to tpublic.com/store/TMPT to get some TMPT gear, if you will, some Hogan era stuff. But also big interviews. Just had Mick Foley on. Just had Jonathan Coachman on, which is kind of getting.
You did have the coach. I saw that.
Yeah, for a lot of publicity. Maybe for the wrong reason, but getting some publicity. And Brian Alvarez, Wrestling Observer's Brian Alvarez, did really well as far as some downloads were concerned. So check those out. Got some great interviews coming up.
Yeah, so I'm not going to lie to you. I haven't gotten to the coach interview yet, but I'm very intrigued, and I just recently listened to the Brian Alvarez stuff. So definitely gear up, guys, and get ready for some really big names there. And he's just name dropping. John Paz casually, let's talk to the coach. Brian Alvarez, just doing my thing. But it's great to know that, you're thriving out there. You're doing great. You're getting some great interviews and putting some great content out there for everybody to enjoy. So I appreciate you taking the time out to join us here on the WrestleCopia brand as well. I know this is your wheelhouse. This is your fun time. This is your getaway kind of. So it's great to have you. And we always have fun here, a blast on this show. And speaking of this show, it was just 2 weeks ago here in 1995 world. The WCW lit the fuse, if you will, with an unopposed debut of Monday Nitro. And then last week, and you were here for that one too, John, history was made with the first ever head-to-head clash between Nitro and the WWF's Monday Night Raw. The live Nitro broadcast wound up squeaking out the first ever true win, a head-to-head win in the ratings war. It was 2.5 to the taped Raw's 2.2. But tonight the battle will continue on, as the Monday Night War just getting heated up, really.
Man, it's so kind of weird, like looking back, because we never even thought about the ratings. But man, if that was like today, we'd be obsessed. Like, Raw won this week. Nitro won this week. Oh my God, 2.5. Oh my God, 2.2. We'd be so obsessed. But back then, we didn't really think about it. We just kind of enjoyed it.
No, yeah, we weren't ready for this type of internet back in 1995 or the Monday Night War. I can't even imagine what would have came out of just watching the WWE and AEW stuff play out today. I'm so glad we were in the time we were in when it took place. I'll put it that way for sure. No, it was a great time though. And to see Nitro get that first win, I mean, that had to be Vince's reality. Like, wake up, pal. And this isn't going to be a cakewalk like he might have thought it would have been walking in.
Imagine that, though. You were like, okay, we have competition. Okay, Hogan's older. I don't think he's got it anymore, pal. Savage is older. I don't think he's got it anymore, pal. And then the first head-to-head, you lose. So it's like, okay, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe it was a misstep. Maybe these guys have a couple more years in the can. So huge win for WCW. I mean, that's just crazy. Like, right off the bat, beating WWF. The benchmark of wrestling. Beating them right off the bat is crazy.
Yeah, and so Hogan, he proved everybody wrong. He got some ratings there on some of the early WCW pay-per-views he was on. And we know what he's going to do come the summer of 96. But right now, I don't want to say it's dormant, but we're trying to figure out what we're doing with him. And of course, Enter the Giant. We'll talk about that on this episode for sure, for good reasons and bad. So we got a little video clip coming up. But before we jump into this week's Monday Warfare, John, I want to clear up any potential confusion about TV ratings and TV shares, what they mean and how to read them, since, we'll be talking a lot about ratings going forward. It's important everybody understands what those numbers represent. Now, honestly, I didn't even fully get what a share was myself until I went and did some digging maybe a decade or so ago. So I just always looked at the rating and that was all I needed. But then the shares came about later on and I go, okay, now I need to figure out what these are too. And so that's what I wanted to do at the top of the program, since we're just still getting things going, getting our feet wet. Probably a good time to explain it to anybody who never bothered to pay attention.
Perfect. Love it.
All right, guys. So I just broke it down here. I'm actually going to read it off to you guys, so I'm not like thinking off the top of my head. Ratings. So let's start with the ratings. So a TV show's ratings refers to the percentage of all TV households equipped with the TV station who tuned in to watch that program. So for example, and I'm rounding, making numbers up here, guys, but keeping them with zeros to make it easy. Let's say there were 100 million TV households and 10 million watched Monday Nitro, where they would have loved that. That's a 10 rating. That means basically Nitro reached 10% of all TV equipped homes. So if Nitro does say a 2.5, that means 2.5% of US households with TV access to the program are watching. Is that about right? Would you say something similar to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Yep.
Meanwhile, now shares are a little different, but the same in many ways. A share is similar, but the key difference is they show what percentage of the TVs that were actually turned on during this time frame were tuned into as far as watching programming. So using the same example, say 100 million households watching TV at that time, and Nitro does 10 million viewers. Again, they would love that. This would be 10% of the viewing audience. That means Nitro captured 10% of all TVs that were actually turned on during the broadcast, and that's pretty much what a share is. Would you say, John?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay.
Makes perfect sense.
All right. So I know that sounds a little confusing, but ratings basically measure the viewership as a percentage of all possible TV households, while shares measure viewership as a percentage of TVs actively somebody watching TV at that point in time. So to put it in context, last week's Raw and Nitro combined in the share department for nearly 7% of viewing. So that's crazy to think that nearly 7% of people with cable television at that time were, at least to some degree, watching wrestling. Now, Eric, we talked about this too. Eric thought some of that was a little flippy back and forth, and I'm sure some of it was, but I can't imagine it was enough to really be like a whole percentage of the share or something of that nature.
You know, he's mentioned that before, but if you really look at it, like let's say WWF, when they're unopposed or if there's nothing going on, especially when they got hot, they had 10 million viewers for a show, and then a little bit over 10 million for when they got real hot. So it's like, wow, I think that there is some flipping, but I do think that there is, when they were real hot, there was definitely 10 million people watching wrestling, at least 10 million people. So I do feel like that's a little bit true with the flipping, but I think you're getting an accurate 2.5, 2.2. I think you're getting about probably 7% share as far as, that's ratings, but 7% share does sound probably pretty accurate.
Yeah, and we're not there yet, and we're not in the NWO and the Austin era and the Attitude Era and all that stuff yet, but I will say, growing up a wrestling fan, during this period, it was not cool to even discuss wrestling anywhere in my world anyway, at school or anything like that. But, as things progressed and everything got hot, I will say I literally would just drive by people on the street, and I would go, what the hell is going on here? Because almost every human being that was out, walking down the sidewalk or whatever they were doing, they were wearing Austin shirts, they were wearing NWO shirts. It was crazy. It was a phenomenon at one point. It's going to be a big boom, like I've never seen before, or maybe since, really, to be honest with you. But yeah, so we're going back in a time where they're starting to build this, and it all happens with the Monday Night, where the competition builds to what we're going to see later on.
Love that. And I love, we're going to get there. We're going to build to it, but still, it's a good, solid audience. And people, obviously, there are WCW fans, there are WWF fans, there are Hulk Hogan fans. So there's definitely an audience, but it's going to be building to a awesome Monday Night War that I feel like people didn't see coming.
No, definitely not. And, we talked about it too last week. Now, Nitro did a 2.9 maybe on the debut on its own, but the following week, Raw did like 2.5, or Nitro, whoever did 2.5, 2.2, whatever it was. I'll pull up my notes here in a little bit. We'll discuss it as we go. But you look at that, that's way more than the 2.9 by itself. So there are other just WWF fans or WCW fans. Some people aren't going to flip the channel. When I was growing up and wrestling got cool, there were certain people that loved one over the other. They weren't really a flippy type person. They weren't a wrestling fan. They were a WCW fan, a Goldberg fan, an NWO fan, or an Austin fan, or a Rock fan. So that's really what we're looking at, moving forward. But right now, there's people trying to figure this out. And I love it because it's fun for us, the fans that just love wrestling in general.
Yep. And when you look at it, when Mick Foley wins the title in 99, this has nothing to do with this year, of course, but when Mick Foley wins the title in 99, they had a poll or, whatever. They were figuring it out. How many people actually switched channels when Shivani told them to switch the channels? And hey, by the way, Mick Foley's winning their world title. Yeah, he used to wrestle here as Cactus Jack. He kind of like, making fun of Foley. 800,000 people flipped over and were watching. So that kind of gives you, and obviously, the overall show, I think it was like a 5.0, and WCW did like a 4.9 or something. So it just kind of shows you how many people are kind of flipping over. It's not as many as you might think. That's just in my, understanding of it, and thinking back of an actual example we have of people that they figured out were flipping. So, it's a huge amount. That was more than watches AEW every week, but it's not a every 2.9 million. You know what I mean? It's decent.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So As we move into the September 18th Monday Nitro, Monday Night Raw, it's probably a good idea that we go back and look at the Fall Brawl pay-per-view, which took place the night before, September 17th in Asheville, North Carolina. It's important to cover the pay-per-views, guys, to keep you updated as to what's happening and why it's happening here on Nitro and Raw. So right now, John, we're going to go back. Just quickie, Fall Brawl results took place the day prior, and I'm going to encourage everybody right now, if you haven't already, sign up for the Ultimate tier here at Patreon. Right now, you're watching us on the VIP Superfan tier. You can get this, and at the Ultimate tier, you get the pay-per-views as well, the big ones. And we covered Fall Brawl 95 in its entirety, including the 45-minute pre-show, all of the matches, all of the promos, everything leading in, and we'll talk about those results in a minute too. And we also have already covered In Your House 3, the triple header, both available right now at the Ultimate tier. So we're going to break down some of the stuff we discussed there. And John, I'm going to take you along for the ride here as we hit on me anytime you want in regards to any comments you have for any of these matches. But we're going to start with just some of the main event stuff, the stuff they did on the pre-show that was also live in the arena.
Sounds good. I love it.
All right, so we're going to go back live on the main event. The pre-show saw Big Bubba with no trouble scoring a quick win over Barry Houston. Disco Inferno made his second televised appearance, defeating Joey Maggs on the card. Also, Eddie Guerrero making his WCW debut, or at least his return, if you count that Terry Funk match from eons ago, but kind of an odd matchup here. I don't know if you remember this one because it's part of the pre-show, but I remember it vividly watching it live. Here's Eddie Guerrero. I've been reading about him in the magazines from ECW, and here he is wrestling Alex Wright on the pre-show, and they do a spot where Eddie takes a dive or a tumble to the floor and blows out his knee in his debut. Not legitimately in an angle, but when I was watching it, I thought it had to be legitimate. How do you debut a guy and he has to, stop the match? We have to stop the match, count out, whatever you want to call it, due to an injury on Eddie, and we'll see him back on TV before too long. But do you remember that spot at all? Do you remember that finish?
So weird, because we used to watch the main event all the time, and I would definitely have watched it live because I used to tape it too, but I don't remember that at all, and that doesn't even make sense booking-wise. Why the hell would you do that with somebody?
And it's so crazy because it's just something that stuck out to me. I remember I can go back 30 years ago, and I remember watching that going, what the heck? He has to be really hurt because this doesn't make any sense. He just debuted.
Weird.
I think these new guys just can't beat Alex Wright, is what it is, right? We saw Sabu.
Yeah. He tried, yeah.
And now it's Eddie Guerrero having a no-go. Just nobody has luck against Alex Wright, Das Wunderkind out there. And the last matchup on the main event saw the American Males defeat the Nasty Boys after Dick Slater comes ringside, the team of Slater and Bunkhouse Buck were the tag team champions going into the pay-per-view. Dick Slater coming ringside, taking off his cowboy boot, clocking Brian Knobbs with the boot. Down he goes. The American Males get the win there, and Dick Slater wanders off, stumbles off to the back with one shoe on, one shoe off, one little spot. So that may play into the pay-per-view in just a moment, but that's kind of set up, and that match right there gave the American Males the win, and that gives them the right to wrestle, supposedly, the Blue Bloods here on Nitro this week.
Love that. I'm loving that setup. I love the angle.
And, there's more to the story as the pay-per-view plays out, so we'll get through into this. I'm sure you remember this one. 20-minute time limit originally scheduled to see Johnny B. Bad take on Brian Pillman, kicking off the show. Two great talents from the time frame. Certainly Brian Pillman from years before, but Johnny B. Bad really coming to his own at this point. I was really starting to get behind the Johnny B. Bad character. Took a few years to really get to where he needed to be, but I just think he excelled from here forward. And they get a 20-minute time limit draw, and the number one contender to Sting was what this was supposed to determine. So they decide this will be continued. The match is going to continue to sudden death overtime. We must have a winner. So at that point, I asked, why have a time limit, right? So, but it was surprisingly Johnny B. Bad scoring the win over Brian Pillman. So at this point, Johnny's supposed to get a U.S. title shot against Sting, but really what came out of that was just a hidden gem of a matchup. 30 minutes they go. Johnny B. Bad and Brian Pillman.
That match was awesome. Love that match. Possibly the best match of the night. It was really, really good. And funny, I think I mentioned this before. I was talking to Mark Merrow about it, and that was truly sink or swim. He thought a lot of people thought they were going to sink, and man, did they swim.
Boy, they absolutely did. It was not a letdown. Like, I was excited when you look at something on paper and you're just not feeling it that day and it's going 30 minutes, you're kind of like, ugh, but you got to power through it. And I was happy to power. It was great. It was, it was phenomenal
Awesome
to work
match.
through.
Yeah, I love it.
Easy to, it's fun to talk over shows, but it's more fun when they give you something to work with. And they gave us plenty to work with that when we covered that. Me and Steve Stone joined the show for that one. Also here we had Craig Pittman defeat his evil nemesis from way back in some war somewhere, Cobra, And it was Pittman rappelling from the ceiling, sneaking up behind the babyface, which, again, I questioned the booking on that. But it was Pittman attacking Cobra from behind and almost going straight into the Code Red, the arm breaker, getting the win in just a minute 22. So Craig Pittman getting one over on the babyface. Kind of weird, but it was fun watching him rappel.
Man, I love it. And oddly, I've interviewed Craig Pittman. He was one of the guys that was like hardest to find for me. Like he was like a super rare guest to get. He's awesome though. Great guest.
Yeah, you never hear tell of him, that's phenomenal. I got to go find that because he was an enigma. Because when they were pushing him, I was like, ugh, who is this guy? It's an acquired taste of the character and things of that nature.
Yeah.
But by the point all these guys started coming in and they were doing this Nitro thing and they kind of pushed Craig off to the side. That's when I caught on. I'm like, oh no, but now I'm starting to dig this guy, this amateur guy that throws people around, just a hard ass and everything. Yep. So it's unfortunate for him what comes to be here out of his character. But we go on. Up next was not a matchup, but instead it was a fun little vignette. They spent a 3-minute vignette here on the pay-per-view introducing us to the new and improved Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, thanks to the psychic friend Gary Spivey.
Mr. Wonderful. I love that song. I love Gary Spivey.
We'll hear it here today.
So good. So good. What a great gimmick.
Oh, yeah, they should have, if Orndorff hadn't got injured, they could have kept introducing new, like we could have got Miss Cleo on there. She could have been, call me now, Paul Orndorff, man.
Yes.
I mean, we could, it would have been great times. So we'll see, or at least we'll talk about that later. Orndorff is on this episode of Nitro. DDP defeating Renegade for the TV title. Match goes about 8 minutes. Max Muscle tripping up the Renegade into the Diamond Cutter. Bang. DDP holding his, I believe, his first taste of gold here in WCW.
Love it. Loved his ascension, if you will. Took a long time to get there, but I loved him slowly but surely getting better and better, but like kind of rising up the ranks in WCW. Basically, he's going to end up riding all the way to the top.
Yeah, he's come a long way from the Dave Sullivan feud from earlier in the year now, winning the TV title, and unfortunately, that's also basically the end of the Renegades push, as we'll see as we continue on. So, I feel bad for what happened with Rick Wilson and his life and everything like that, and it just, I feel, going back and watch, he was put in this position. What are you going to do? Turn it down to be an Ultimate Warrior clone or a ripoff or whatever I mean, the guy, he was offered a job, offered a great gig, the way he came in, and unfortunately it just didn't end well for Mr. Wilson. But we're going to continue on here in September 95, Fall Brawl, Harlem Heat defeating Dick Slater and Bunkhouse Buck for the tag team titles because, remember what we talked about in the pre-show, Dick Slater coming down, clocking Brian Knobbs? Well, Brian Knobbs returns, removes Dick Slater's boot from his foot, gives him the same old shoe right to the head, knocks out Dick Slater, and the Harlem Heat going to cover and steal the tag team titles thanks to a little help from the Nasty Boys. So we have new tag team champions.
Kind of like that tag team division. I know maybe some people didn't, but I kind of do. The Nasties, American Males, Harlem Heat, the Stud Stable. I'm liking Blue Bloods. I'm liking that tag team division.
There was a lot of teams in this period where I liked one guy on the team. And so it was fine with me. As long as he was tagging, let's see some Booker T. Let's see some Steven Regal. Right. I love Bobby Eaton, but when we're doing the wrestling thing, I mean, it was more of the Regal thing at this point. Bobby was kind of getting up there, but I forever and always, Bobby Eaton is one of my favorite workers of all time. So, but yeah, so you look at that and you look at some of the other teams you were just talking about, and not a bad division at this point in time. Of course, we know it's going to grow. Also on the card, this is one of your big ones. Arn Anderson defeating Ric Flair. Match goes about 23 minutes. Brian Pillman, of all people, randomly wanders to ringside. Or maybe he came out of the crowd. I know a lot of people were watching that matchup, right? Yeah. That's right. We had a lot of the guys watching. They were interested in seeing these two best friends for the last 10 years collide in the ring for the very first time. Arn Anderson stealing the win after Pillman gets up on the apron, kicks Flair in the back of the head. He stumbles right into the DDT. Beautiful DDT, Arn. And he gets the win. He defeats Ric Flair. So maybe a little respect coming by way of the Nature Boy before too long.
That was so good. I loved that. And it was like, well, what the hell's going on? It was shocked with Pillman. It's shocked with the alliance with Arn. I love that match. The feud is great, even though it's kind of like, whoa, these two shouldn't be feuding. They should be teaming, right. The whole thing with the breakup with Vader and then them not getting along and everything else. It was done really, really well. And man, that kick to the back of the head to DDT, that was awesome. I loved it. I didn't know what the payoff was going to be when I watched that live. So talk about a confusing finish. Brian Pillman goes from jobbing to Johnny B. Bad to interfering in the Ric Flair Arn Anderson match. And you're like, what does he have to do with either one of these guys? And why did he help Arn? Because up until the matchup, we were to believe Ric Flair was the heel based on the way he was cutting the promos, and Arn was going to be the babyface. And now it feels like everything flipped overnight. And
It's a very interesting storyline that we're going to watch continue to develop as the weeks progress. And last, it may be least, was the War Games match featuring Team Hogan. Of course, Hogan, Randy Savage, Sting, and Lex Luger replacing the AWOL Vader. They score the win over the Dungeon of Doom when Hogan puts Zodiac in, I'm sorry, John, one of the worst camel clutches I've seen in my entire life. And the Zodiac Man was deciding, should I submit? Yes, no, yes, no, yes,
So
yes.
bad.
And to do that in a War Games was just sacrilegious, if you ask me. I mean, what War Games represented versus the cartoon of what they gave us here, and R.I.P. Kevin Sullivan, and I love a lot of the guys in the match, but just, man, it was not done too well, I thought, anyway.
The only good thing about the match was the Luger turn, but not really turn on Macho Man, because it's so funny that people thought it was a screw up. It's not a screw up. It's actually a genius move. He stops, so he's not going to clothesline him, like he kind of catches himself, and then he continues on. And people are like, oh, he screwed up. No, that's exactly, because it's like, wait a second, he could have stopped, but he continued. So he has an out either way, like, oh, my momentum got me. But obviously he's doing it because he's really a heel. He really doesn't like Macho Man, so he hit him on purpose. And
you will always hear the defenders say that it was a screw up, and Lex was, total baby, right? So we'll see how that plays out too.
Exactly.
But the rules of this War Games, though, they stated that if Hulk Hogan and his team won the matchup, that the Hulkster would get 5 minutes alone with Kevin Sullivan inside the cage. But that goes only about 2.5 minutes, halfway into that 5-minute interval, when out comes the Giant, who comes out choking Hulk Hogan down and then doing the old Zeus and snapping, supposedly snapping the neck of the Hulkster there. Get the Oscars ready, guys. Hulk Hogan down and out, quivering like he was Jimmy Valiant, baby, all over there. But it was cool to see the Giant come out, and man, watching him enter the cage was just amazing. His agility when he was young and in better shape before he continued to grow, if you will. So watching him grab the top of the cage and pull himself over the top rope, just, like hanging on monkey bars to get in the ring and come over and attack the Hulkster. And Hogan has himself a serious opponent now. And what I felt by the end of this pay-per-view was like, even though they're not completely gone, it's basically the end of the Dungeon of Doom and Hogan feud. Like, the cartoon aside, this is the real deal now. We've got the Giant in here.
It almost felt like a breath of fresh air that you're getting in a new Hogan opponent. You're getting in this big monster heel. He kind of has the background where, like, he smells like the Giant brother, where he smells like Andre, so he could be Andre's son. But you have something, because it's like Hogan versus Sullivan. That's just not, there's no money in that. Like, Hogan would just destroy him. Like, there's nothing. Like, but he's got the Giant. Like, holy crap, who is this guy? So a lot of possible, like, good storyline progression and good opponent for Hogan, because he really needed it at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, at this point, guys, we are going to bid adieu to those of you here on the free version of Monday Warfare. We're going to head off now and cover full Monday Nitro and Monday Night Raw in their entirety. Can't wait to get into it. September 18th, 1995. We're heading back in time one more time. For those of you still with us here on the Patreon, and for those of you curious, you can join the VIP Superfan tier, and it gets you all sorts of video casts, including the Coliseum video cast with Gene Jackson, the Pro Wrestling Academy video cast with Dan Ginnity, and of course the Monday Warfare video cast. And John Paz, even though he's not necessarily the full-timer at this point, he has been, and so I appreciate him so much. And John, we're going to see the rest of these guys on the other side. For those interested, sign up now, patreon.com/WrestleCopia, that VIP Superfan tier, and we'll hope to see you soon. But right now, guys, we're going to kick it off another week of the Monday Night War. Away we go.